Welcome back to the podcast. If you're running a business, you work in a HR department, you manage a team of people, then you know how crucial good training is for an organisation. Well, today we've got a great conversation lined up as we dive deep into the world of e-learning. And the guest that I'm chatting to is the founder of Chameleon Creator, which is a game-changing software that really is redefining how major Aussie businesses such as Specsavers, ANZ, the NRL are approaching learning development and their internal training. So Todd Hammington, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Zara. Thrilled to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Todd, let's dive into it because it really does feel like the way that we learn and what we expect from training at work has shifted pretty massively, particularly with everything sort of moving online over the last 5 years or so. What are some of those, fundamental changes that you've noticed in how people want to learn these days?
Yeah, like you said, there's kind of a big, movement happening at the moment, just purely through the speed in which businesses are operating and having to adjust, and they sort of build that fast twitch fiber in order to pivot. So, and the new generation of employee, get such an amazing digital experience outside of work. So they kind of expect that when it comes to the workforce. So yeah, there's definitely a big change. And I think there's also a lot of, especially with high performers, there is a lot of curiosity out there to learn while you're on the tools and that gain that institutional knowledge. So, like people that tune into your podcast, there's a huge amount of curiosity out there to grow and build their own artillery as an employee. So yeah, and that's kind of where our tool steps into that void, really, that's been there for a while. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm keen to dive into that, but maybe before we do, I know that your background was really quite heavily sort of based in design. And so can you talk to us a little bit about the role that you were doing and what kind of projects you were working on and how the learning space kind of all fused into where it is now?
Yeah, sure. So I cut my teeth originally as a UI UX designer at a mobile application company, actually, and sort of helped elevate their brand during their sort of startup scale up phase. So that was actually really great, IP I could bring to the table in the learning world later on in my career. But so yeah, I sort of, specialized in illustration, UI, product design, and I always really appreciated the fact that a good designer could communicate really well. Obviously, the visuals are one thing, but I think a really good designer can communicate the complicated and simplify it for those out there that are interested to learn. So, fast forward, I then worked at a learning and development agency in Melbourne for 8 years as design lead. And yeah, we were delivering really large scale projects across Australia and New Zealand and Asia. They're really tight timeframes, small budgets. So we were expected to do quite a lot with less, I guess you could say. And I was right in the crux of delivering those projects. So, the team would go out there and pitch these amazing ideas and I'd be the one that would kind of have to deliver on those. So, and it's hard. Learning in particular, there's a lot of moving parts to design. It's not just a static marketing website with images, text, and videos. There's assessments, there's drag and drops, there's branching, there's scenario building. So to get that to work across a huge audience really quickly across multiple devices was quite challenging back then. So yeah, and that's actually why I built the tool to kind of help, remedy that pain for myself. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's what is Chameleon Creator? Let's dive into
it. Yeah, so I guess as simple as possible. It's a big question. Yeah, someone asked me this the other day and said, "Could you simplify it again?" But it's a learning design tool that companies use to create their digital training on, and that digital training really vastly changes across our 260 customers. They're all sort of mid to large enterprises, and learning is very different for each one of those. But the common I guess, deliverables would be anything from really good onboarding or pre-onboarding, compliance, HR, legal, subject matter expertise, and that's where that sort of institutional knowledge gets, fed through the entire workforce there. There's also really neat sort of leadership capability building, even sort of product sales enablement. So yeah, learning sort of, if you were to draw out, an organizational chart with all the functions, I always say that learning sort of sits like the glue between all of them, because it actually caters for content for all parts of the business. So yeah, but yeah, our tool is essentially just the authoring tool. Anyone can essentially pick it up within an organization and create learning on it, and they can deliver that learning to any device really rapidly. So
yeah, that's awesome, because I know that one of my previous roles was a head of people and development, and part of that position was really focused on learning within an organization and how people
awesome.
can, essentially the staff life cycle. So like the onboarding, bringing them into the company, how they're onboarded, what that kind of like onboarding training looks like. And then as they kind of progress, that retention kind of period throughout their role, moving through into management positions and developing. I know when I started developing that, which would have been maybe like 4 years ago now, it was kind of challenging to either find a software that wasn't really complicated or wasn't wildly expensive, that then I could try and kind of play around with a little bit. And so there was quite a lot of Google Docs in the initial stages
for sure.
that we were building out, and like then recordings and like Loom recordings and trying to couple them together, and it was quite messy. But it was like one of my favorite things that I did in my position.
I'm assuming you would have sort of seen, the impact that, just onboarding alone has in regards to building that upfront alignment with new hires is huge, because that's where, like you said, that life cycle starts. You're hiring, it even starts before that. If you're arming your recruitment team with a really powerful employee value proposition, they're hiring the right people, and those people are aligned to your business, your culture, and your values, and that really does set their career up for success within that organization. So
yeah, absolutely.
Did you enjoy that part of it? Was that
it was a lot to kind of I guess initially sort of wrap my head around, in terms of because I didn't necessarily start in recruitment, for example, and have that, I guess, initial interview kind of period. But it really focused on, essentially the onboarding training, because we worked with a lot of like grad students. So it was bringing on a lot of people that might have been their first or their, early kind of stage marketing roles. And obviously working in the digital space. Back then, like, marketing degrees didn't focus on digital at all.
For sure.
So there was a lot of...
That happens when they're inside the doors of your business, I guess.
Yeah. And so there was quite a lot of like hands-on training. And so it was just trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way to teach someone this principle that still can apply to like different areas or different clients or different industries.
Sure.
It was really interesting, but definitely saw like the retention period and the attrition kind of increase and decrease where it needed to, as a result of the onboarding, because people kind of just felt so much more empowered in their role when they started working with clients and like contributing to the team conversations.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like there's lots of stats out there about this, but it's amazing how many organizations lose talent because of the poor onboarding, and retaining that talent. That's just a force multiplier in your business, So it's just really, I guess, it shines a light on how important that initial kind of touch point is with a new person that's joining your organization. If you can, the larger the organization, the more holes appear. But yeah, I'm sure, there's lots of people out there like yourself that just even technically building it is difficult. You're searching for the right tech. You're collaborating with subject matter experts. You've got a lot of spinning plates happening. So that's it. Which, yeah, I've been there. It's been fun.
Yeah. So where did the idea, I guess, or the passion behind like e-learning and just like learning and development come for you?
Yeah. I guess like rewinding the clock back, I actually, I actually really enjoyed that transition going from, UI app designer, where it was more about like converting punters into revenue. Where learning was very different. Your currency is completely different. You're actually bettering someone's career. And, net result of that is they're adding more positive impact on a business. So yeah, that was my first initial like, wow, I really enjoy designing for learning. My feedback, I guess, would be based on engagement and ensuring that adults were picking this stuff up and not getting that sick feeling of going, oh God, here's another e-learning module where I have to sit through it in 45 minutes and click next, like a PowerPoint on steroids. We wanted to change that. So that was my initial challenge that I really enjoyed stepping into as a designer. But in saying that, like I certainly lived some of those pain points that you had. I just didn't have technology up there that really helped me create something I was really proud of as a designer, and I was responsible for real projects that were going out to hundreds of thousands of employees, so that the pressure was on. And that's where digital learning, I could just see this opportunity going, okay, there's these amazing products like Figma that, their web applications and what they're doing is pretty magical. How do we bring some of that IP into the learning world for the first time? So, and yeah, like I guess, like I said earlier, I built Chameleon as a framework for our design function, or our studio at the time. And it was just, we called it Chameleon because we're dealing with a multitude of different brands, and we wanted to design learning that represented that brand identity really well. So that's how it started anyway, and yeah, kind of just organically grew into a tech startup. But that was, to answer your question, that's what really piqued my interest in it, which is a really fun journey, to be honest.
How challenging was it to bridge that creative vision and obviously that part of you that's like so innate to like delivering a project with actually the technical component of building like a software?
Yeah. I guess it sort of goes back to what I was saying around good designers can communicate something really well, and that's kind of, I guess, at the time I didn't just go and build a framework and go to the whole studio, hey, let's use this framework, wham, bam, thank you, man. It was, I need to get the CEO in the same room, I need to get head of sales in the room, I need to get our learning design lead in the room and discuss to them what my pain point was and visually represent where those challenges are. And I used this framework to do the presentation as well, which really helped. So that was built in Chameleon. And then I sort of said, look, let's try using this framework for projects moving forward. So I guess that was the start of like, well, design's really powerful in order to get technology off the ground. But after that point, after we released it, it was the epitome of a minimal viable product. We had like 6 interactions that worked really, really well, but we had to really front foot that with all the clients we're working with, saying, we'll build you really powerful learning that represents your brand really, really well. But there's only 6 interactions in this library that we can work with. And that was quite, that was challenging at the time because, like you said, I wanted all these designer-led interactions that they could grasp, but kind of had to tether that back a little bit at the time. But as we spun out into our own entity and released a real product to the market that enterprises were using, I was really, I guess, really clear on the roadmap, and that kept the company, I guess, really hungry to walk towards that North Star. And, the North Star, like any tech startup, I'm sure a lot of founders say this, but it always just seems slightly out of your reach and it moves every time you grow. And that hasn't stopped in the 4 years we've been alive. There's certainly a lot of things I'd still liked, and we've bootstrapped our way to 2 mil ARR. We haven't gone and done sort of seed or Series A. We've been running pretty lean. So, and that kind of means you do kind of leave a few features on the table that you'd like to have, but it certainly makes you prioritize and listen to your community, because they help you forge that roadmap. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess going into that a little bit in that what was that kind of the thinking behind bootstrapping, I guess, like the financial push behind the business? Was it because you wanted to listen to community, or, what was the driver?
Yeah, I wish I could say I sort of waved the magic wand and said we're going to bootstrap, and I wasn't by design, I don't think, at the time. Okay. I wish I was that smart or succinct, but I realistically, like, we built this product for real projects at the time within a design agency, and we hit this tipping point where it was producing some really powerful, awesome learning for customers, and they wanted to sign up to the tool and edit that themselves. So I guess once again had to take a step back, present this tool as being its own entity to the shareholders within the company we built it within. And spinning out's a story in itself. It's quite a unique journey from, organically building a product to solve a problem to spinning it out to a SaaS startup. But what it did do is meant we could hit revenue on day one, which was, I think that led us into that bootstrap model quite organically, and that meant we could provide enough value to customers for them to pay us that annual license up front, and we would invest every single dollar back into the product again. And that actually just sustainably grew the business as time went on. And yeah, fast forward 4 years, and I think, there were opportunities to fundraise, but we've now built a really sustainable revenue engine that can, is still growing in a downturn market, which is pretty neat. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you've got, like, kind of spoke about at the beginning of the conversation too, was like some of those really like major household names that you guys work with, like ANZ and Specsavers. Can you talk us through a little bit about like how they're actually utilizing the software and like some of those benefits that they're seeing within the business too?
Yeah, for sure. So we got a lot of awesome customers like those two as well. Like, I think, we're pretty fortunate, and we've cultivated them through that model of, like you said, we've cultivated the few, we haven't boiled the ocean, and that's how we've gained momentum. And ANZ was one of our first customers. They had I guess you'd say a pretty lean learning and development team there. There's sort of 15, 16 people that were delivering content for 60,000 staff. So you can imagine that's a big bottleneck in regards to all these functions requiring content, and they were the specialists in order to deliver that. And I think, where we came in was we completely democratized that content creation by giving them a tool that anybody could pick up. Their subject matter experts could pick this tool up and create knowledge base based on their expertise and deliver that to their audience. So they have now over 500 people using Chameleon within ANZ creating learning content, which is actually pretty amazing. And and we're just the tool, by the way. We're just the vehicle. Jenny Shanklin, shout out to her. She's the one that drove that huge culture shift there around, okay, our learning and development team isn't going to be gatekeepers anymore. We're going to be enablers, and we're going to enable that huge audience of content creators and change that whole design cycle within the business. So pretty incredible what they're doing.
That's phenomenal to go from, like you said, 15 people delivering content amazing. For tens of thousands, to have hundreds of people creating and contributing, I think is a huge part too. Like, I know thinking back to, like staff retention, but also like employment enjoyment and like, loyalty within an organization, and just finding that kind of like sense of purpose.
For sure.
In my experience, it was definitely like that contribution component was a huge element to how long staff stuck around for, how they felt about the organization, how they felt their contribution and their role contributed to like the bigger picture of like what the company was working towards.
Totally.
And it just kind of, as you you would probably know, like, as you start to train and educate and like explain something to someone, your own kind of foundation and like solidification of that knowledge becomes so much stronger as well. So
Absolutely.
it also then helps your own confidence within your role and like how you're, again, giving back to the company. So I can imagine that's just had such an impact across that company.
I totally agree. And I think I always say, like, I almost see them as force multipliers within the business, those individuals, because they're the high performers, and, they're almost like the shining light on how to be a good employee at their company. Who else is better to create knowledge base within that business rather than those, those seasoned veterans that have been there, they've performed at a high level. And there's something, like you see, quite liberating about being in that position and teaching other people your expertise. It almost helps you sharpen your tools. So, and yeah, those are the people you want to retain. And as a net result, even as a business, the economics work itself out pretty nicely. So, but yeah, that I think ANZ have done fantastic, and they're not the only one that's really taken that model on board, but that's what we're seeing a lot of now is, I think they're finding that nice Goldilocks zone of going, okay, let's arm our high performers or our subject matter experts with a tool where they can share their institutional knowledge to the business, because that's where that kind of nice career pathway can lead. So yeah, it's been pretty awesome that, like I said, we're just the tool. We sort of hide in the shadows a little bit in regards to delivering that, but it is pretty amazing to watch from afar, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, obviously, like securing ANZ as a client, and like you said, they were one of the early adopters for you guys. Yeah. Like that in itself is massive. But then I guess it's also about like that relationship and that retention of that client as well, and keeping them happy and keeping them on board. And so how have you kind of shaped and built and maintained those relationships?
Yeah, I think, and this ANZ's one of, I guess, many in regards to listening to their feedback and supporting them. As basic as that sounds, but that's not something I was getting when I was in the learning design community with the tools out there. We sign up an SLA day one with our customers, knowing that it's going to take 24 hours to respond at the worst case scenario to any inquiry. That sounds really basic, but the tools we were using when I was designing, I've still got outstanding tickets with those companies.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So that almost, I guess, like built this community for all the wrong reasons. It's an amazing community, the L&D community, but a lot of them are out there sharing their knowledge and troubleshooting and hacking their way into these, projects that they've had to do because there just isn't actually support out there, technical support out there to help them deliver on it. So that's the real basic, I guess, like that's our baseline in regards to the way we work with customers. But then like I said, like we're evolving our product rapidly every year. We're not turning the Titanic. So, and our customers are all at the forefront of doing that. So, we run collective sessions with all of our customers where they share projects, they share their pain points. We were just in Auckland at a tech fest last week and got some of our really cool customers together for a dinner, and they actually shared some of the projects they were proud of, as opposed to the year before we actually talked about the pain points. And so there was a different sort of shift in regards to the way we shared knowledge. But yeah, that's something I'm quite passionate about. Is I was part of that community. I was the one designing and responsible for delivering those projects in the past, so I'm pretty lucky that now I'm a tool that can actually service those needs, and that's something we're always going to have with us. So, and my team's exactly the same. I've got a really talented CRO, Lucy Luo, and she's really passionate about that. I think that's the one thing I've learnt from her, is just a pure curiosity to learn from our customers. So yeah, she's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I mean, the fact that you still have outstanding tickets, I'm still processing that reality.
Yeah, I know. It's yeah, like you're just completely left in the dark. If something didn't technically work, that was it. I had to jump on forums and figure out what other people had done, and 90% of the time we'd just have to bespoke develop an HTML5 ourselves because the tools out there were just letting us down all the time. So yeah, that's when it comes to like technical problems. But like you said, there's also the opportunity for them to have a voice in the way it works moving forward. And it is difficult though, because you just want to say yes to everybody, and I think we have to really lean back on our design principles a lot, and they're quite simple, which is it easy to use? Is it fast to create, and is it beautiful? We're a design first tool, and we want to inject that color back into the L&D community again, because it is pretty grim.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even just looking at your software, like, it is aesthetically extremely pleasing.
Oh, thanks.
Like, it is a really beautiful software to look at, and I can imagine like the more that you kind of play around with it, the more exciting it becomes too. Do you find that through your experience, like almost like selling through design is easier than selling through technology?
I actually think that's very true, to be honest. And with when customers sign up to our product for 2 or more users, we actually design a custom template for their business for them, because it's so easy for us to do in our tool. And I think them seeing the impact of what good branding looks like within an e-learning tool for the first time is quite I guess they can see themselves using it moving forward and being really proud of what they're creating, because branding's huge, and I think it gets lost in L&D quite often, and the marketing team and comms, they're great at keeping brand at the front of everything they do, but because of that, because they're so technically hamstrung, typically L&D, you kind of lose that love for your brand a little bit. So yeah, I think design's hugely powerful. You learn with your eyes, and that's just the reality of it. So when you're providing a beautiful experience like that new generation we were talking about earlier expect, it's quite liberating. And yeah, it unfortunately, it should be the normal, but it hasn't been for a long time in the L&D community. So that's quite neat. And I think where it's quite unique for me is we're designing a design tool. So when I used to be used to doing the design, for the customer, where now we're actually building a tool that allows them to design, and that is definitely a slight shift in the way our product team has to think. So yeah, we're still kind of finding that nice Goldilocks zone between giving people all the features they want and also providing some really nice design guide rails and them finding that nice like middle ground between those two worlds. Because like I said, if it gets too technical, you start to kind of get that blank canvas paralysis, and people spend more time on the how rather than the why. So yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you guys really are, from like the absolute foundations of the business model and the team and like the values that you're instilling in people, it is just like a customer-centric product and service that you're creating at its core, and not in the sense of like, every business says that they're customer-centric, but it sounds like the way that you even like improve and develop and like kind of train the product, that is like the core foundation of who you guys are. Yeah, and I think like we definitely try our best, and I think that's the one thing I can look in the mirror and say is we've got 260 quite big organizations that use our tool, and I'm definitely really proud of the way the team constantly put our customers first and foremost with every sort of shift we do. And yeah, and I think that's how we've actually cultivated revenue through a bootstrap model, is by caring about our customers. And I'm pretty lucky to say I'm really good friends with a lot of customers that have built learning over the years, and and I can pick up the phone and go, hey, we're about to release an analytics platform. Can we please prick your brains on what good analytics look like from your business perspective? And 9 times out of 10 they're happy to do that, and even like provide case studies for customers just to build that I guess safety net around, yes, this product works for real customers. It's not just a marketing website that says we solve all the world's problems.
Yeah.
so yeah, and as you know, like that kind of, when you get that fundamental security net of, okay, yes, New Zealand Post, all the large like government organisations use this product. I know it's going to be secure, safe, and deliver on what it promises. So yeah, pretty lucky.
So for bragging rights, tell us, who are some of the customers that you guys are working with at the moment? Because I know there's some like pretty phenomenal businesses in there that trust your product.
Yeah. Yeah, quite a few. I think I could almost break it down to different segments. But yeah, we work with some large FinServ companies and like ANZ, Westpac, ASB Bank, quite large government organisations like Victorian Government, Sydney, a lot of city councils across Australia and New Zealand. We actually just recently started working with Ministry of Foreign Affairs in New Zealand and Ministry of Education. So yeah, a lot of government departments, a lot of utility companies like energy, like AGL Energy and Meridian and Mercury. So it's utilities is really big, which is interesting. Yeah, the kind of postal services.
Awesome.
Yeah, the list goes on. KPMG, some of the big four use us. So,
yeah, wow. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, Twitter. There's some really cool, I guess, like tech companies that use us now, which is really interesting. Like we work with Canva. They use our tool to build their learning on, which they do awesome content. Sharesies in New Zealand, which is a really neat tech scale up that's doing really well. It's awesome.
It's a pretty high level list.
Yeah,
which is phenomenal. But how are those? Obviously, I can imagine those businesses are all using the software really differently as well,
Yes,
and they're obviously seeing
definitely.
like different like cost savings and return on investment for their organizations. What are some of the other ways? Obviously, we've kind of spoken a little bit about ANZ, but what are some of the other ways that businesses are utilizing it?
Yeah, like you said, like every business has such unique DNA, and some of them are in different stages of their life cycle. Like, some companies have done a big fundraise, so they're really looking to build efficient onboarding and, I guess, digitize their learning for the first time, where we might work with a city council that's actually looking to move over to Chameleon and arm their subject matter experts with, they might be implementing a big strategy change and pivoting their enablement material for that, teaching them how to use new tech across the board. There's the compliance stuff, which, you hear the word compliance and it does sort of send a bit of a shiver down your spine, but it's super important, as you know, when something goes wrong, like something in the cybersecurity world or, one of the ports, for instance, if they're not crossing their T's and dotting their I's in regards to keeping their workforce safe, it can actually end in some pretty catastrophic events. So it really de-risking the whole business through our tool, which is huge, and using L&D for the first time as a competitive advantage, I think, is the biggest way to, as a macro level, as opposed to just that checkbox compliance learning. I think that's where we've seen the biggest shift, which is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I can imagine there's probably endless ways that businesses can utilize the program and the software, and
really is. Yeah, you could almost like double click on one business and you'd have a very unique case study. Like I really like working with Chris at Specsavers because he uses our analytics engine to have it more of a conversation with his workforce as opposed to broadcasting the learning. So And he's really critical on using analytics to enhance the design across the board there, but also like for the first time provide a report on that return on investment, because a lot of the time L&D can get looked at like a cost center because it's not as binary as a revenue engine or a marketing engine where it's like XYZ equals, ROI. We're learning, it's a little bit harder to report back to a C-suite and say, you've invested this time and effort into your staff, here's how they're engaging with it, and here's the impact that it has on the business. So that's really exciting as well.
And I can imagine the impact on the business as well. Like, speaking from my own experience, it's it's not like you run a marketing campaign and you're getting results within X period of time, or you're changing your sales processes and your sales, model, and then you're starting to see like your conversion rate increases or whatever it might be.
Yeah,
it is
totally.
a longer thread and a longer time before you actually start to see those payoffs.
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned earlier actually around that life cycle, of learning within a business, each part of the employee journey changes, and learning can impact that. So pre-onboarding and onboarding, that's just speed to impact. Like, how do you get somebody hitting the ground running and having a positive impact on the business? If great onboarding can shorten that time quite significantly. How do you build that institutional knowledge into their everyday as easily as possible and have on-the-go learning at their fingertips? If they're a salesperson, how do we build really clear and really scalable enablement for the sales team? So they do have, some sales teams have quite big product spec that you can't just roll off the top of the dome. How do you get them their on-the-go learning to their mobile where they can access product spec or just basic enablement? I think the other interesting thing that I've always noticed is that shift between being really good at your job to being promoted to a leader, and it doesn't always work well. So you need really good leadership training in order to help those superstars become good leaders. How often do you hear that a great salesperson doesn't make a great sales manager? It's probably just because they haven't been provided the right resources to get there. And so that's another big, I guess, whole topic in itself is leadership. But also, like, what's really cool is, like, we work with Chorus, which is similar to NBN in Australia, and their CEO uses Chameleon to present, like, really high-level presentations, and, he's sending out a responsive HTML presentation on those sort of topics. So, yeah, it's pretty, like, every business has a unique case study for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know, again, kind of as you touched on, like, leadership as like a core component. As I kind of progressed throughout my own role, that was one of my core focuses as well, was really
Cool.
in that leadership space. And it was the problem that we were facing was that people were being promoted into positions because they were high performers, but they were being promoted into positions and then being required to manage people with zero management experience, in terms of everyone learns differently, everything adopts knowledge, everyone adopts knowledge differently, and every person is a different manager as well.
Absolutely.
And there's just so much involved. It's not just moving from a technical role into a leadership role. And so one of the key things that was kind of one of my KPIs and something that I focused on was, okay, how can we build a leadership training program for people that are sitting in that high performance space? Not necessarily like a guarantee into a leadership role, but okay, if it's something that you're interested in, let's talk about it in like your quarterly or your annual review, and then let's go, okay, it's a 3-month program. What do we need to do? Obviously, soft skills, hard skills to get you into a position where you feel super confident.
Absolutely.
And then obviously, again, it goes back to that. If you feel confident in what you're doing and you've kind of got a couple of stretch targets that you're working towards, then you're going to do a better job because you feel more confident in yourself.
Absolutely.
And then you're kind of having that like consistent positive reinforcement model almost, that like you're learning something, you're testing something, you're trialing something, you're then trialing it with a team member, and then that's working well, and then so you're like, oh, actually, I am a good manager, or I am a
Yeah.
good leader, and I can step into this space. And
Yep, totally. Yeah.
yeah, it was had such an impact on staff retention.
I could imagine, actually, and totally understand where you come. Like people are usually, how often you hear people are the hardest part in regards to my job, and that's because we're all complicated creatures. And,
Yeah.
and you do have to play the course in front of you. And I also can completely empathize with you, because I went from different, I guess, currencies as this business developed. Going from just a designer that would hand over something and get that big green tick next to the Trello board at the time, to all of a sudden I'm celebrating the success of a developer that's just rolled out a feature earlier, and I'm actually celebrating completely different things, but because you do get that, I feel that reinforcement through good learning, and I think it does definitely, once again, build force multipliers, and I think that's what businesses seek to reach as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it was I went through that transition period, and I was like, I felt like underprepared, and so then I was doing all of this additional learning externally to be like, okay, well, I know I've got this situation coming up tomorrow and I've never handled that before, or I would do kind of
totally.
like mock scenarios with my manager at the time,
nice.
who we have a mutual connection.
Yes.
So and then
good.
it just kind of sort of transitioned into a period that then I was like, okay, well, this has worked for me. How can we replicate this for different people? And again, people learn differently.
As you could imagine, some of these bigger organizations, you just magnify that. And
absolutely,
you got thousands of leaders that are that have thousands of reports coming into them, and you just got this layer cake of leadership that sits across multiple layers, and if you're not providing enablement for them, that can really have an impact on the entire culture of the business. So and definitely not saying like digital learning's the solution to all of it, definitely not, but we do see some pretty awesome material that gets created to at least give that kind of fundamental foundation for those people that are shifting into a managerial position and feeling a bit more confident around, okay, these are the basic 101s that I need to get right in order to at least feel like a confident leader. So it's that's one of many examples of how learning can shift the needle in the right direction. And you look at like things like masterclass, for instance. There's an appetite for people to learn this stuff, but if you can teach that institutional knowledge internally, that's where they're going to get the most traction. So
absolutely. I kind of want to go back to something you said a little bit earlier too, which was kind of touching a little bit on some of like the challenges in the software space and promoting and like selling software, and going back to that design versus technology, but like particularly in like the B2B market, what would you say some of those kind of like key challenges are in kind of trying to sell software in the Australian market, particularly B2B?
I think I guess where we've had success, and we've also had failures, but I think where we've had success is by cultivating really good customers in a community that is pretty tight-knit. So most of our revenue comes from expansion and referrals, and then inbound. So I think this is the only kind of currency I know, really, because I haven't worked across multiple startups, but that's worked really well for us, especially in Australia and New Zealand. We get people that are proud to bring our tool along with them to a new position at a new organisation. That comes back to, are you creating a really powerful product that makes people look like superstars? Because they will bring that tool with them to throughout their career. It's been really cool seeing even, part of a job criteria that's on Seek is to learn to ensure they know Chameleon, and that was a really like goal of ours at the time. We feel like on this side of the world anyway, we've become more of a go-to tool, which is doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen through creating a product that, and like it does go back to creating your customers with care and empathy and respect, because they can be your biggest salespeople at the end of the day. And we didn't have a huge sales force that we could roll out and, create a huge pipeline with at the time. So yeah, a lot of our emphasis went into product. But yeah, so it's every year as a business, I've only got 13 staff, so we've done this quite capital efficiently, I guess you could say. But every year it's a different challenge. So, and we're learning every year, because, we're at that kind of unique stage now where we need to hire more customer support managers in, because we're at 260 customers. We've only got one CSM. We've got, 2 salespeople that have a good, I guess, inbound funnel they can work off. But yeah, I think the right people find our tool, which is really cool. Those that are really wanting to create beautiful learning, and they find us, that's really satisfying for us as a business. And then we're just sort of starting to take, I guess, our marketing channel more seriously now that we've got a marketing budget for the first time. So that those unit economics mean a lot. And bootstrapping, you certainly learn how to spend $1. It's amazing. You don't have that ability to kind of throw things out there and hope it works and fail. We're pretty astute at spending, and my one-man marketing machine, it's actually 2. We've got 2 now. Bernadette's just joined us, but yeah, they punch above their weight in regards to building that interest for the sales team to come in and enable those sales through. So it's been challenging, but I think I'd say the biggest challenge is I guess kind of year 2, year 3, where we had that initial growth, and then you kind of learn a few things like, oh wow, we need to get another CSM in because support, we're dropping the ball on support a little bit here, because of just pure volume. And as a CEO that's never done this before, like I was learning that stuff along the way. And sometimes you do have to learn through failure, and it's really, we've had customers that have gone, hey, you've not got back to me about this problem. It's super embarrassing, and we took it really to heart. So that's where we had to bring in resources that we didn't know we had to bring in at the time. So yeah, and long story short, I've just brought in the right people, and they've been awesome at owning their roles, and that's helped me a lot. Yeah,
that's phenomenal. It's as you were chatting to, I was just sort of listening to kind of the way that you're talking about the business and the way that you're talking about your people and the business model, and it's I was just wondering, do you have any sort of I guess like phrases or like approaches or like mindsets to the way that you kind of have built the business, run the business, the way that you exist? Did you see yourself like owning a business, like a SaaS business?
Not at all.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of might have a limited scope in regards to advice, because I've only walked one pathway. But I always think, like, I do get asked a lot, has it been stressful? Or what's your resilience been like? And yeah, definitely grown a few grey hairs, but I think like that initial phase, I had that gut churning excitement when I built the tool for myself, that I could deliver content on that I'd be really, really proud of, that outweighed the stress of creating a business, if that makes sense. So I think that hunger to keep building on that outweighed all the pressure and the stressors of running a startup. So I think like that kind of was my form of resilience, I guess you could say, just pure excitement. And I think everyone I spoke to about it back then, I felt like that resonated with as well. So I kind of built a team that shared that. And, one thing we always kind of admire about our staff is they do have that founder mentality. because we were fortunate enough to get that alignment as soon as they joined us. They feel like they own the problems that are on the table, and it's such a different sort of vibe as opposed to someone that kind of just checks in, checks out, does their job, and and we're not by any stretch of the imagination, we're not falling into the other category where we're expecting them to work late nights or anything. They're definitely not the case. We're trying to fit in the middle, that uncomfortable middle where we want them to be happy, we want them to live awesome lives, that we're fully remote. So, we get to live in some pretty cool areas. We still get together and but yeah, it's pretty lucky we've got that kind of like natural instinct to have that founder mentality when it comes to solving problems. So
yeah, that's phenomenal. That's awesome.
Not sure if there's any sort of sound bites there, but it's a bit of a long-winded one.
No, it's interesting. I think that whenever I kind of talk to business owners, regardless of kind of what stage they are in their journey, the core thing the commonality I think I hear is that the passion and the why always outweighs the what,
right? Okay.
or the how. And it is really because you've like identified either a problem or a pain point or like a gap in the market that there can be a better option for people, whether that be people that are, again, other like business owners or whatever kind of area industry you're servicing. But it really does come back to that passion and like that's your driving force.
Yeah, I think that sums it up quite well, because we're providing our product to people that have experienced the same pain as I had, but usually at a bigger level actually. But they're usually, multiplying the problems that I had because they're typically working within a bigger workforce. So yeah, I think we're quite fortunate. We got to not just like build a tool for ourselves because it was fun. We built a tool that we were delivering real projects on that had real deadlines, and quite a lot at stake. So it really forced us to incubate a pretty good product from day one. I'm not sure if that's normal for tech startups. Like there seems to be like like pre-revenue fundraising because of things like there's a big total addressable market out there, and if you do the backwards economics, this solves a pretty profitable tool. I always hear people say that's just not the formula anymore. You kind of got to really litmus test your product and live it for a while before you can go out there and realistically get someone to separate ways with their money to buy it. So yeah, we've organically done that. I'd say if I could rewind the clock, we definitely would have done a lot different and been more efficient in certain areas, but that's the macro sort of level of it, that's for sure.
And I guess looking ahead, kind of what do you foresee as being like do you foresee any kind of like big trends coming in like the L&D, e-learning space, any sort of like emerging technologies that are really exciting you at the moment?
Yes. I think visibility of engagement is now we're at a technical state where we can deliver on that at an affordable cost. So, in the past, businesses were trying to hack their way into finding out really basic kind of analytics on the way people were engaging with their digital learning. And you wouldn't think it would be rocket science because there's things like, Google Analytics out there that does that for a public facing website. Of course it makes sense, but learning, like I said, there's a lot of moving parts, and solving a problem like how's a large cohort of people answering this question, and if they're getting it wrong, how many are getting it wrong, and which option are they taking, and how long are they spending on it. So I think getting visibility to that to unpack better design is really exciting. Using that for machine learning in the future is really exciting. Opt-in, and I think that's something that kind of we've always had in a roadmap around learning that institutional knowledge for L&D. Once we get good analytics, like how do we empower designers to elevate them off the canvas at a better rate? So yeah, there's certainly a lot of the emerging tech that's out there at the moment. I think it's quite nice seeing the L&D market kind of get up to speed with that faster than it used to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So and look, there's no doubt that there's been a lot of conversations around AI. I think where we sit is kind of in that uncomfortable middle ground in L&D, where there's learning out there that no LLM would have, and also you run the risk of that 50 shades of beige, where you don't just want to prompt an AI engine to build your learning for you, because I think adult learning's a little bit too mature to receive that well. But there's also like very unique DNA within a business. Like if you looked at someone like, a distribution centre in the middle of Western Australia, their health and safety standards around a forklift and what colour lines they work within is very unique. And you need that human design layer on top of some of the artificial intelligence that's out there. So where I sound like that's a negative thing, but I think that's actually really exciting, where like AI can elevate the floor, but there's still a huge space for that human design on top of it. And that kind of excites me as a designer, to be honest. I don't like the whole AI is going to be the silver bullet and solve everything, because it just won't in our industry. And then there's that other extreme around just AI slop, and we don't want to go that far. So we're in that middle ground, which is quite exciting, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like, and I mean, I can imagine like your background as a designer, there is a lot of it that you foresee from the human perspective that AI just isn't quite there yet, or just that human connection that is the foundation of design, really.
I think so, and I like we my CTO and I we're sort of building a prototype at the moment. Just what problem can AI solve? And for us, it's really simple. It's removing blank canvas paralysis, and getting people off that canvas faster, and then coming in and spending time on the things that are valuable, rather than spending time on sort of more of the basic mechanics of setting up an e-learning module. So I think that's where we're kind of creatively thinking at the moment, which is quite exciting. So but yeah, we did come from a little bit more of a cynical place in AI at first, because there was a huge amount of hype and fear mongering around it originally, but I think it's balanced out quite a lot. And you can see that even with the way our customers are adopting it, they're a bit more pragmatic around it. There's a lot of security questions around it that they're working through now. So it is maturing into quite a good place. It just took a bit of time to get there, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Todd, thank you so much. If there's any way that people can contact you after listening to this, or they want to know more about the software, what's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Todd Hammington. But if you just want to learn about the business, chameleoncreator.com, or just Google Chameleon Creator. And yeah, there's a lot of customer use cases on there. There's a lot of knowledge base on there as well. So, and just reach out to the team. We can certainly get on the phone and kick things around, which is the fun part. Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, we'll put all the links in the show notes for all of those resources as well. But thank you so much for coming on from I guess a position of having worked in the L&D space for multiple different organizations. Awesome. It's been a really interesting conversation to see how your software works and how it's actually revolutionizing the space. So thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it. And thank you. It's been awesome.
Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you want to hear more from us, you can get daily videos and podcasts on Rask's YouTube channel. Or if you want to enroll in a free course on investing, property, business, money, you name it, you can join over 34,000 other students and enroll in a free course on the Rask website. Simply head to www.rask.com.au and follow the prompts. Thanks for watching this Rask podcast.